Okay, so today we're going to deep dive into the world of Charlie Munger.
You know Warren Buffett's right-hand man.
Right.
But this guy, the way he thinks, that's what's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
We're talking about his worldly wisdom, right? And
Mhm.
how he uses that to kind of make decisions, not just about investing, but about pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And our main source for this deep dive is a speech that Munger gave back in '94.
All the art of stock picking.
Right.
And, it's about investing, but the stuff he talks about,
Mm-hmm.
it's surprisingly relevant
Oh, absolutely.
to all of us, no matter what we do.
Yeah, and that's because Munger, at his core,
Yeah.
he's all about building this lattice work of mental models.
Yeah.
Now, before you say, that sounds boring, just think of it like this,
Instead of just having one tool in your toolbox,
right?
you've got a whole set. Each tool or mental model comes from a different field.
Different field of knowledge helps you see problems and opportunities from different angles.
So it's like having X-ray vision, but for decisions.
It's more like having a well-rounded perspective, I guess.
Yeah, for example, Munger, he's a big believer in understanding basic probability.
Okay.
And he explains this using this hilarious analogy.
Of a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest.
Okay, that's a visual I won't soon forget.
But I get it. If you don't understand the odds, you're going into situations totally unprepared.
Exactly. And that applies to so much more than just, poker or investing.
Right.
It's about recognizing when the odds are stacked against you and making smarter choices.
Right, like knowing when to fold in a negotiation or when to walk away from a bad deal.
Precisely another essential tool in Munger's lattice work is accounting.
He often refers to it as the language of business,
Okay,
because to truly understand how a business works.
you need to be able to read its financial statements.
Okay, I'll admit accounting isn't my favorite topic.
But I'm starting to see how it's not just about the numbers.
It's about understanding what those numbers mean in a bigger context, right?
Exactly. Munger would say it's about seeing beyond the surface.
Okay.
One of his favorite anecdotes is about this engineer, Carl Braun.
Who totally revolutionized how his company, C.F. Braun, handled accounting.
Wow.
Braun was this brilliant guy.
Amazing at building oil refineries. But the traditional accounting methods just weren't cutting it for these complex projects.
So what did he do?
Invent his own accounting system.
He basically did. Braun tossed the old rule book out the window.
Created a system that actually reflected the true costs and progress of their projects.
What's fascinating is how this connects back to Munger's whole lattice work idea.
Okay.
Braun saw a problem.
Borrowed a solution from a completely different field and revolutionized his industry.
That's amazing.
So it's like, don't be afraid to steal or borrow good ideas from unexpected places.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial model in Munger's lattice work.
Psychology.
Okay.
He's constantly emphasizing the importance of understanding human behavior
Both the rational and the irrational.
and how it plays out in business and investing.
Because at the end of the day, even if you have the best spreadsheets and all the data in the world,
It's still people making the decisions, right?
precisely. And people are complicated.
Remember Carl Braun, our accounting revolutionary?
Yeah.
Well, he was also a stickler for clear communication.
He had this 5 W's rule.
Every memo, every instruction had to answer who, what, where, when, and why.
5 W's, that seems kind of obvious.
Doesn't everyone do that?
You'd think so, but Braun insisted on it.
Even when the why seemed self-evident.
He understood that people were far more likely to understand and follow through.
If they knew the reasoning behind a request, not just the request itself.
Wow, that's such a good point.
And it's so applicable to everyday life, whether you're trying to get your team on board with a new project.
Or convince your kids to clean their rooms, just clearly explaining the why can make all the difference.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of Munger's approach.
By understanding these fundamental models of how the world works, we can make better decisions in all areas of life.
So we've got our lattice work started here.
With probability accounting and psychology,
Right.
what other mental models does Munger use to kind of understand the business world?
Well, he's a big believer in microeconomics,
Okay.
which helps you see businesses as kind of interconnected players,
Yeah.
within a larger ecosystem.
Okay, so instead of just looking at a company's numbers like we were kind of talking about with accounting.
You're saying we need to understand its place in the market, its strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
and even how the whole industry is doing.
Right. Munger is particularly interested in those durable competitive advantages.
What makes a business truly stand out from the crowd and stay ahead of the game?
He always talks about advantages of scale, right?
Like how the bigger a company gets in a certain area, the harder it is to compete with them.
True, but here's where it gets interesting.
Munger's also keenly aware of how big companies can get bogged down by bureaucracy and lose their edge.
Okay.
Think about what happened to Sears when Walmart came along.
Oh man, Walmart just completely disrupted the retail game.
They were lean, efficient, and just laser focused on what customers wanted.
Exactly. Sam Walton, Walmart's founder, he was obsessed with efficiency and innovation.
Constantly finding ways to cut costs and improve the customer experience.
Sears, meanwhile, had become this huge, slow-moving machine stuck in its old ways.
Right.
They just couldn't adapt fast enough.
It's a classic David and Goliath story.
Except in this case, Goliath had a whole army of accountants and middle managers holding it back.
That's a great analogy.
And it highlights another key model.
Recognizing when technology is going to help you and when it's going to hurt you.
Okay, tell me more about this.
It seems like technology is always changing the game for businesses these days.
It is. Munger tells this great story.
About when he and Buffett were in the textile business.
Okay.
They were approached about investing in this new loom.
That would supposedly double their output.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me.
More efficiency, more production,
Yeah.
more profits.
Well, Buffett actually said, gee, I hope this doesn't work because if it does, I'm going to close the mill.
He said what?
It doesn't make any sense.
It does when you understand the bigger picture.
The textile industry at the time was a brutal, low-margin business.
Buffett knew that any efficiency gains from this new loom would just get passed on to buyers as lower prices.
They wouldn't actually make any more money.
Wow. So sometimes new technology isn't about making more.
It's about protecting what you already have, or at least knowing when to cut your losses and move on.
Exactly. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Munger also talks about serving, recognizing those massive technological waves early on and riding them to success.
Okay.
Think about the rise of personal computers, the internet smartphones.
The companies that saw those trends coming and adapted their businesses, they were the ones who thrived.
That's such a great way to think about it.
Riding the wave.
But how do we as investors, or just people trying to understand the world, how do we spot those opportunities before it's too late?
It's about looking for those companies that are on the cutting edge of a significant technological shift.
And they have a clear path to kind of dominate that space.
So not just the latest gadget or app,
Right.
but something with real staying power.
It's exactly. Now, all of this ties back to how Munger views the stock market itself.
Okay.
He doesn't buy into the efficient market hypothesis.
The idea that stock prices always reflect all available information.
Wait, really? Isn't that like investing 101?
I thought everybody believed that.
It's a popular theory.
But Munger thinks it's too simplistic.
Okay.
He compares the market to a racetrack.
Where people are making bets based on a mix of information, speculation, and even emotion.
The stock market is like a racetrack.
Okay. I did not see that coming.
It's like a great analogy.
Just like at the track, stock prices can fluctuate wildly.
Sometimes driven more by hype than actual value.
And that's where Munger sees an opportunity.
So he's looking for those moments when the market overreacts.
When a good company's stock is unfairly punished, or a mediocre company is riding a wave of hype. And that's when he swoops in, buying when everyone else is selling, and vice versa.
It takes a lot of patience and discipline.
But that's how he finds those near cinches.
So it's like he's a contrarian.
But not just to be different.
Right.
He's still looking for those amazing businesses.
He's just willing to wait for the right price.
Exactly. He's not chasing the short-term gains.
He's playing the long game.
Right.
Remember those near cinches we talked about?
That's what he looks for in the stock market.
Okay.
Opportunities where the odds are overwhelmingly in his favor.
And when he finds one of those opportunities...
He doesn't just dip his toes in the water, right?
No, he jumps in head first.
Munger believes in concentrated investing.
Okay.
He'd rather put his money into a few companies he understands deeply.
Then spread it thin across, dozens of stocks.
That's pretty different from what most financial advisors tell you.
They're always preaching diversification.
Right. But Munger would say that too much diversification
It can actually hurt you in the long run.
Really?
If you only own tiny slivers of a bunch of companies,
You're not going to see the same explosive growth.
as you would if you own a larger stake in a few truly exceptional businesses.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like putting all your eggs in one really sturdy basket that you've inspected very carefully.
I like that analogy.
And it highlights Munger's emphasis on really understanding the businesses he invests in.
Okay.
He wants to see that durable competitive advantage.
What makes this company different?
Right.
What keeps them ahead of the competition?
So give me an example.
What are some hallmarks of a Munger company, so to speak?
Well, they often have a powerful brand.
Like Coca-Cola.
Okay.
or a unique technology.
Like Gillette in its heyday.
Right.
Or an innovative business model that's hard to copy.
Like Jayco,
These are all companies that have been around for decades.
dominating their industries.
Exactly. Munger's not interested in flash-in-the-pan companies.
He wants to own businesses that can stand the test of time,
Right.
that can weather economic storms and come out stronger on the other side,
So it's about thinking long-term.
not just chasing the latest hot stock tip.
Precisely. Now, another question Munger asks is how important is management?
And it's a tricky one.
Okay.
He believes good management is important,
But he's wary of putting too much stock in a charismatic CEO.
Okay.
He says a great business can often overcome mediocre management.
But a mediocre business rarely thrives, even with a superstar at the helm.
Interesting.
So it's more about finding companies that are kind of firing on all cylinders.
Not just relying on one person to save the day.
Exactly. Now, here's something else Munger pays attention to.
That most people overlook.
Okay, what's that?
Tax efficiency.
Taxes. That doesn't sound very exciting,
I know it's not the sexiest topic.
but it has a huge impact on your returns over time.
Munger understands the power of compounding.
How even small differences in your tax rate.
Can add up to enormous sums over the long haul.
Okay, so explain it to me like I'm 5.
How can taxes make that big of a difference?
Let's say you invest $10,000.
And you earn a 10% return each year.
Okay.
If you pay taxes on those gains every year, your money grows more slowly.
Then if you could defer those taxes for many years,
I see.
the longer you can let your money compound without being taxed.
The faster it grows.
Okay.
It's like a snowball effect.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
But it makes perfect sense.
So Munger looks for companies that allow him to keep more of his money compounding for longer.
Exactly. Now, even with all this knowledge,
Even when you find amazing companies with durable advantages.
you still have to be careful about the price you pay.
Okay.
Munger learned this the hard way during the Nifty 50 era in the 1970s.
The Nifty 50, what was that?
Basically, investors got so excited about a handful of supposedly can't-miss stocks.
That they bid up their prices to astronomical levels.
Okay.
These were big, well-known companies.
Like Xerox, Polaroid, even Disney.
Wow.
But the problem was their stock prices were so high.
That they were no longer justified by their actual earnings.
So even a great company can be a bad investment if you overpay for it.
Exactly. It's a reminder that value matters.
You want to buy $1 for 50 cents.
Right.
Not the other way around.
That's great advice for investing and for life in general.
Absolutely.
Wow, this deep dive into Charlie Munger's world has been mind-blowing.
We've learned about the power of mental models,
Understanding how businesses operate,
recognizing opportunities in the market.
and finding those truly exceptional companies that can stand the test of time.
We've seen how important it is to think long-term
To be patient, to focus on value.
and to always be learning and growing.
And we've just scratched the surface here.
There's so much more to explore in Munger's writings and speeches.
If you're interested in diving deeper, I highly recommend checking out the full transcript of his Art of Stock Picking speech.
It's full of incredible insights that will challenge your assumptions.
And change the way you think about investing business, and even life itself.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
Giving you the tools and knowledge to see the world in a new light.
So until next time, keep those mental models sharp.
And don't be afraid to think differently.